for the CEO to come out now and say, Europe is the objective, Europe is the ambition. Great, that's fantastic. I guess you want to hear them sort of things as a fan, but then you've got the manager doing a separate interview going, well, in effect, we're completely undercooked for the season.
Yeah. So obviously the both of them are on the line. And didn't the CEO say against Sunderland or in the programme notes with 2 games to go that he was happily dissatisfied with the way, and hasn't he done a moonwalk on them quotes and like that Homer Simpson me where you just go back and say, I apologise for what I've said, it didn't come out like that. And I understand that.
I think that, look,
but why is it taken best part of 3 months for that to come out and say, no, I got that completely wrong?
But what do you make of the timing of Angus Kinnear's interview? I can understand Moyes' interview because he's gone so long without speaking to anyone, even the club, and then it's a week before the season, so you would have to expect something. He's gone to obviously Sky Sports News, is obviously the main media provider of all the football, so I can completely understand that. Angus Kinnear's obviously done a series of interviews this week with BBC, a couple of the fan channels.
Yeah.
The timing of it, do you see this as well-planned, a well-oiled, orchestrated time to communicate, or is it a bit of a, like you say, backtrack, PR offensive where we need to come out and say something here?
If you want my honest opinion, I think I would prefer the CEO and the manager to be communicating together if they're coming out with these sound bites. And I'd like it done through the official channels, i.e. Everton's website. Because we don't hear from the owners, they haven't been near the stadium. So all you've got now is from listening to the likes of Angus Kinnear and David Moyes. They're the front of Everton Football Club because we don't hear from the owners, we don't see them, they haven't been near the Hill Dickinson Stadium. So all we have to go from in terms of Angus Kinnear and David Moyes, they are telling us week in, week out what's happening with our football club. So you've got David Moyes speaking to Sky Sports, and you've got Angus Kinnear 24 hours later speaking to BBC, and then a couple of fan channels after that. I don't think, in just my opinion, that's not the necessary way to be aligned with each other in terms of the football club, in terms of the short term and the long term. Where are we?
We'll move on to Angus Kinnear and his comments. This is ones that he did with Julia Bold on BBC Radio Merseyside. So he described last season as a failure. So I'll read it out and we can discuss. So he says, quote, "They, the Freegan Group, viewed it as a failure because it was a failure. They knew we put ourselves in a really good position. And I think they were excited that we put ourselves in that position." I mean, you talked all day how he's backtracked potentially a little bit from his Sunderland programme notes. Obviously, those comments were made before the Sunderland game, which he does suggest that the club were still within a chance of qualifying for Europe. I think if we even just taken 3 points from that, just the Sunderland game, I think we still would have qualified for Europe. But I understand objectives, whether it's a business, a company, a football club, change as the months go on, as the season goes on. You're not telling me that at the start of last season, the objective was to qualify for Europe. I think they've already stated that somewhere along the way. So to come out now and go, well, we see that as a failure that we didn't qualify for Europe, I find that quite astonishing, to be honest. Don't get me wrong, I think you can look at things maybe in isolation, and there was a couple of games during the season where, we let ourselves down. The Tottenham game where we lost 4-1, the Newcastle game where we lost 4-1, a couple of others. But largely before that international break, I thought David Moyes was doing a really good job. Now, the last 7 games where we didn't get a win, this is going to sound really harsh on Moyes here, but I do think it showed his limitations as maybe from a tactical point of view, or where he was just not willing to adapt and change the squad. And I think that's kind of where he let himself down. But I do think those comments a little bit throwing Moyes under the bus, because the ambition wasn't to get into Europe.
It was never there.
That's what I mean. So to come out now and go, well, it was a failure, it's strange.
I agree, because I don't think hearts and hearts, all the Evertonians that were going to after we'd been beaten off Leeds on the opening weekend on the Monday night when we were going to the Brighton game, I don't think anyone would have thought that we would be challenging in around Europe. I don't think I think when we done our predictions this time last year, I think I had Everton in 9th, and that was the highest place out of all our predictions. I think you went 10th. I think Gav went 11th, something like that. And looking at it, everyone had Everton around about mid-table. So I don't think the club could feasibly say that it's been a failure because we never got Europe. It was a failure towards the back end of last season because Everton were in a really good position. And if you look at it, the team that started last season have been fighting relegation the past 2 or 3 seasons, and they spent 120 million. Now, 120 million into context was that 14 clubs spent more than Everton last summer. Everton were 8 in the net spend. So that's a squad that's been fighting relegation the past 2 or 3 seasons. And in terms of net spend last summer, they were 8. Like City, Chelsea, Liverpool, all the other clubs spending more net spend last summer. So that squad has visibly just been staying up, and it's been the 8. So technically, you'd look at it and go, well, it probably finished. Consider it's been fighting relegation, and we've got 8 net spend last summer. You'd probably say anywhere between 9th and 15th, something like that. And lo and behold, that's where we finished. So I don't get this narrative that it's a failure because we never got Europe. We never got Europe last season because we obviously done brilliant, I wouldn't say brilliant as such, but had a very good away record. Obviously capitulated against the teams that had a low block in against the Hill Dickinson. And then towards the back end of last season, we lost Jack Grealish, we lost Jared Brandtwaite, and we couldn't break teams down. And that was it in a nutshell. And David Moyes has a lot to answer for in terms of he should have utilised the squad a lot more. They were the 3 big reasons, in my opinion, why Everton failed to get in Europe. Now, that is overall, if you look at it towards the start of the season, in my opinion, I don't see that as a failure. That's just some home truths that have rang true. He should have learned his lesson in utilising the squads. Jared Brandtwaite got injured, Jack Grealish got injured, and that was it in a nutshell. So I think where Everton finished round about 13th, could have easily finished 8th. I don't think they are equipped for European football, in my opinion, last season. So I don't see it as a failure.
I mean, the frustration that we had in the January transfer window last year, where the club weren't willing to do any business, if they were serious about qualifying for Europe, surely they would have backed the manager in that month.
January?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what did they do? Got Tyreek George on loan for the injured Jack Grealish. And everyone knew we needed a full-back then. So,
I mean, just looking at the table from about January onwards and, December, January, the table was that congested that at one point we could go from 12th potentially all the way up to like 5th.
Yeah.
Even 4th. I mean, that's how within two games or so, that's how crazy it was. So the club weren't willing to back the manager in January and make that push for Europe, because I don't know whether they actually thought that we would be able to make it in the first place.
So what do you think, Ian, the sudden change in the CEO then, in terms of
No,
Sunderland? Why is it waited 3 months for?
We're not saying what the fans kind of want to hear, isn't he? That's what he wants. And I've got no issues with the communication. The timing of it could be fantastic, but it could be really bad because we're going to get beat against Crystal Palace on Saturday. I don't think it's going to be looked on favourably, to be honest.
No, yeah. What can you see happening? Because what I can see happening, in my opinion, if Everton get a couple of mixed results, a couple of bad results, if we haven't got the right back and centre forwards are what they are and whatnot, and the left back's obviously limited, if we get a couple of bad results, you'd expect obviously the manager to probably lose his job because there's a lot of pressure on him. Now, if that's the case and the new manager comes in and he doesn't get that new manager bounce and the same cycle goes on, the Everton cycle that traditionally happens, your Lampard, your Dice, your Benitez, your Silvers, it's just a constant change of turnarounds at Everton. When it's like an 18-month spell, it constantly happens. So if that happens again, then what next? It can't all be about the managers all the time. That's my argument, and I keep on referencing it's about recruitment. All these coaches, we've gone through every set of coach you could think of. The ones blowing smoke up backsides and Roberto Martinez, to the ones being Stour and Dublin and a little bit forefront like David Moyes, who've had the world-class approach like Carlo Ancelotti, who've had the young up-and-coming manager like Marco Silva, who've had the Sean Dyches of the world and Sam Allardyce. We've had Ronald Koeman, we've had every type of coach you could think of. And guess what? It hasn't worked. And do you know why it hasn't worked, in my opinion? Because we haven't got our recruitment right. We've got to get recruitment right, regardless of who is in charge of that football club, in my opinion.